Hello, ladies and gentlemen, out there in Wrestling with Egos land. This is a figurine of the glorious Bobby Roode. He could have entered at number 24 the other night in the Royal Rumble, and the figurine could have won the Royal Rumble, and it would have become a bigger story than the outcomes of both Royal Rumbles.
Shots fired.
Exactly. That is the state of mind that I, the intellectual savior of the wrestling masses, Brian, find myself in. I am joined tonight, as ever, by the Reverend of the Rant, the pastor of Pissed Off, Patrick. Good evening, good sir.
Good evening, my brother. Quick programming note, as you can see, that this is a two-man show, and it's also on a Wednesday night. We normally record on Fridays, but here's my situation. In case you guys haven't heard, we live in Cleveland, Ohio, Northeast Ohio, and on this particular Wednesday night, right now it is 9:45 p.m. Here in about 3 to 4 hours, the weather is supposed to get crappy in terms of lots of ice, lots of snow. The only thing we're missing is Led Zeppelin singing Immigrant Song. My place of employment, my warehouse that I work in, we are not working tonight because our bosses are like, no, you're not driving home in this bullshit. Stay home. Exactly. So I talked to the guys. Hey, can we do the show tonight? Brian, yeah, I can do it. Isaac, I don't have internet until Friday. So thanks, Spectrum. I don't know
We're gonna do our level best to carry on, and we're gonna dedicate this show to the big man, the Don of Wrestling with Egos, Isaac. This one's for you, brother.
And we're gonna blame Spectrum, whether or not that's his internet service provider. We're gonna blame Spectrum.
We're just gonna pick.
Yeah, we're just gonna pick one, and they're to blame. Spectrum. Ugh.
So, ordinarily, folks. Actually, I should start with this. Thank you for watching us, however you're watching us, whether it's on YouTube. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe and share button. Leave a 5-star review. Spread the word to your friends. Hey, there's this great wrestling podcast out there. If you're consuming us in the audio version, whether that's Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts, Intergalactic Radio, all the rest, same thing. Make sure you're subscribing. That way you get the notification when we drop a new episode. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your interactions with us. That's how we got the second half of our show tonight, where we're going to review one of the greatest Rumbles and one of the most consequential Rumbles of all time, 1992's version.
One of?
Yes, there's other ones in the discussion. I'm not saying that it's arguably or inarguably the greatest Rumble of all time, but it's there's others that I could put forward, but that's another bar talk for another time.
Hot take coming. GOAT.
Okay.
92's GOAT.
We can agree to disagree on that, but we'll get into that later on. Thank you, Nick, by the way, again, for expressing your interest in having us review that. We will get to that shortly. But first,
real quick,
got to talk about that 35-pound elephant, 335,000-pound elephant in the room.
Hey, real quick, have you noticed our boy Nick has a thing about the year 1992?
He does. He must be. There must be some gaps in the knowledge, or that must be his go-to time period for wrestling.
Or
either way, we're happy to.
He might be a younger cat, and that might be the year he was born, and
Whatever the reason, the point is you can too give us some content to unpack. Drop us a line, wrestlingwithegos@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter, at WrestlingXEgos on Twitter. You can also tweet at us directly. Our contact information has been displayed on the screen.
Isaac is I the fourth. I'm not going to put it up today because it looks stupid when it's a two-man.
When it's a two-man with three things, yes. But the 35,000-pound elephant in the corner of the room is that on Saturday night last weekend, WWE held their annual Royal Rumble event, and we talked last week on our preview show about how all of us look forward to the Rumble because it's Wrestling Christmas. It's the way they slingshot themselves into the New Year storylines.
This was more like wrestling Labor Day.
Yeah. Where you half-heartedly go to the grocery store. Yeah, I'll get some brats. Yeah, I'll get some grandma's potato salad, and yeah, I better get a bag of barbecue chips and some La Croix, and you throw it out there, and and you invite about 6 people over, and they look around at the spread, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And you're like,
Right.
"Well, it's Labor Day."
Well, you tried.
Yeah. I'm going to advance the point tonight, and this is not how I think a Rumble event should go. I was more excited about the matches that did not have anything to do with the Royal Rumble, because there were a couple bangers thrown in there.
Yeah.
And the Rumbles themselves left me wanting more. What is your take on that take?
The matches remove the Royal Rumbles plural from the show, and it was a damn fine card. You had one match that was and that was Becky Doudrop. Copeland's and Mazanins was a banger, like we expected it to be. Bobby Brock was a banger, like we expected it to be. You could have done more with it, but the payoff in its own little bubble, not counting anything else, the finish of that match was sick. And then you had Seth and Roman to open the pay-per-view, and oh my lord, the positive things that we can say about that match. The Rumbles in gas.
Yeah, it was Roman and Seth is already written down in pen for Brian's match of the year candidates, in my opinion.
I called it during the preview that that Roman Seth could be WWE's first contender for match of the year, and they didn't disappoint.
Because I was otherwise disposed over the weekend, I told the guys, hey, you got the show chat. I'm going to mute that because I know you guys are watching live. The Lovebird and I made plans that I couldn't switch around because I did not realize that the Rumble would be on a Saturday, so that's fine. So I watched it Sunday night. I turned the chat back on, and it took about 6 or 7 minutes for the phone to stop tweeting at me, beeping about the new notifications. There was that much chatter going on about all of it. And a lot of the chatter centered around this match between Seth and Roman. For those of you who say that WWE does not know how to tell a story, either short-term or long-term, pull up the Peacock Network or find it on YouTube because it's probably already out there on YouTube and watch this match. If you've been even paying entry levels amount of attention to the storylines involving these two gentlemen, you're going to walk away impressed with this match. And we could do a whole show on this match. We're not going to, but we could do a whole episode of Wrestling with Divas on just this match by itself.
I literally pulled up our show chat that we had first. And first off, I'd like to point out RJ is still a part of our show chat, and RJ, the most anti WWE guy I know, was praising this match. I can't remember if it was you after the fact, after you caught up and watched it, or if it was RJ himself that referred to the storytelling in Roman versus Seth as, and I quote, Shakespearean.
We both did. I said it watching it on Sunday night, and he quoted me back and said, I thought the same thing last night.
And
it's apropos.
I third that. The match itself, great. I mean, just if you strip away the entire story of that match, it's still a very, very good wrestling match. When you add the storytelling involved in this match, oh my lord, Roman comes out, his usual 95-hour-long entrance. By the way, anytime I mention Roman's entrance, have you noticed that the time that I say it takes longer? um, and then all of a sudden, Sierra Hotel.
I don't know what I was expecting. I was not expecting that. My jaw dropped when that.
I heard that. Nurse Rant Modon and I were sitting here. She was doing paperwork and half paying attention. I was very much paying attention, and I heard the speaker crackling and those first two letter call outs, and I went, oh shit. Rollins comes out in full-blown Shield gear. I mean, the only thing missing was the blonde streak in his hair. It's Shield Rollins, but Seth freaking Rollins cockiness, which
the cackling and the strutting, and
I still find utterly annoying. And then he gets to the barricade and does the rollover that he did as Shield Rollins, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so freaking awesome.
And props to Roman, because Roman has. I thought for a while. I said it towards the end of last year on this show that I thought the story that Roman is trying to tell, at this point in time, had kind of gotten stale.
Agreed.
And it's all about your dance partner, because with Seth, he's been forced to confront some things in the storyline that he's never had to before. And one of the things that he still has to confront and make peace with is he's not part of the Shield anymore, and where he was a made man at that point.
Right.
And the cuts to the looks on his face, like the I cannot believe you are doing this right now. Where do you get off, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
If looks could kill, during those cutbacks to Roman as Seth making his entrance through the crowd, if looks could kill, Seth Rollins would have never made it down onto the floor. He would have dropped it somewhere on the steps. It was beautiful. It was just that facial selling that honestly and truly you don't get much in this era of professional wrestling across the board. I mean,
there's a handful of people that can sell with their face.
The last time I saw someone sell with their face in a specific situation this well was, I believe we're heading into WrestleMania 2000, and Linda McMahon added Mick Foley into that match, and just the seething on the face of Triple H.
Yeah, Triple H was one of the best at it. I would argue also that somebody who's on his way, it's still not fully formed yet, is Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara is getting better at making you feel for him when he's getting beat up.
Right, but that's a whole body of work. I'm literally talking, this.
Right. Well, so am I. I mean, that's what I would argue too. I know he's not anywhere near, these other gentlemen that we're talking about yet, but he's on his way.
In force. But yeah, dude. Let's get to the match itself real quick. And one thing that stood out to me in this, and I don't know if you noticed it or not, Brian, but Seth freaking Rollins wrestled the first part of this match like Shield Rollins. Yeah. I mean, it's a very up-tempo, breakneck pace that he wrestled. And I was like, and I was even mentioned in the chat room, man, I miss Shield Rollins. That guy was a wrecking ball.
And I would argue that he had to do that because if he tried to just trade holds with Reigns, the match was going to be over in 10 minutes. Right. But Rollins does the style to take the fight to Roman and take him into deep waters. We've used that phrase before. Like we're begging for somebody else to do to Britt Baker the way Thunder Rosa does. Right. Thunder Rosa takes Britt into deep water. Roman very rarely gets taken into deep water anymore.
Something else to consider, though, was, him wrestling that more Shield style from a psychology perspective took Roman further off of his game because, okay, this is old Rollins. This is not the guy that, is coming out in the fur coats and he's the visionary. This is, this is the dude that was Plan B and back and wrapped a chair around my back 150 times on an episode of Monday Night Raw.
Right.
Foreshadowing alert, and I have something very specific I want to talk about when we get there.
Okay. And it forced Roman to do some things that maybe he ordinarily wouldn't have done, because let's not forget, no backup. There was no Usos because of the events that happened on television earlier in the week leading up to it.
And no Heyman because he Superman punched him.
Right. And no Paul Heyman because of other events that happened. So this was you finally got Roman having to take care of things on his own, which he was able to do eventually, but not before Seth got his digs in. And I just thought I'll just jump to the finish, and then you can, take your points, in where you may. We got a guillotine placed on Seth at the end of the match, and Seth refuses to put his arm down. Or no, Seth, they raise it up, and the arm drops, and when it drops on the ropes, and Seth starts laughing again.
Right.
And that makes Roman, refuse to take the guillotine off. Ref's got to call for the DQ because it doesn't break on the count of 5. And then Roman proceeds to wear Seth out with a chair. What I will argue is, I know we hate schmaz finishes, and I know we hate DQ finishes, and you say, oh, they happen all the time. The story you tell on the way to getting to a DQ finish matters here, gang. It's not just, I'm going to trade my moveset with your moveset, and then you're going to, hit me with a foreign object or something like that, or cheat to win somehow, and that's that. This story, which I'm sure you're going to talk about in a moment with Roman in the chair, was Roman's way of putting a period at the end of this sentence, I think.
I agree.
And that's where the DQ works.
I agree. What I loved was the spot with the chair, because I don't know if you realized exactly what happened with that first chair swing.
I do.
In case for anyone else that's not following me on this, Seth Rollins fell the exact same way Roman Reigns did when Rollins busted up the Shield. Draped across the bottom rope, and then I went back and looked. I forgot the count. Roman hits him the exact same number of times.
Now that I did not know, but
I
don't they make sense?
I literally was curious. I'm like, I wonder. I'm like, how anal retentive were they on this? And the answer is very. The only thing I'm very upset about in this match, foreshadowing alert number 2, is now this brings one gigantic question. WTF are they going to do with this now? Probably nothing because of the events later on in the Rumble. But I honestly feel like they literally have killed this angle off, and there's so much more meat on the bone.
There probably is, but the deep thinkers in Stamford, Connecticut, because they have a plan, Patrick. And if you believe that, I got some swampland in Florida you might be interested in.
You know who else had a plan on Saturday night? Shane McMahon.
Oh, God. Not yet. Not yet. It's not time for that yet.
Not tonight. Not tonight.
Yeah, not tonight. I guess, and again, I'm guilty of this as anybody else. I sit here and spin my wheels trying to match my brain with what they're thinking. they must have a plan for something, you know, the Chamber and leading into WrestleMania and all that kind of stuff. They must have figured that now was the time to tell this story with Seth. As I said, put a period at the end of the sentence and move on to the next challenge. What the next challenge is, I couldn't tell you because I've seen so many different reports and rumor and this and that about what they're going to do. We're not going to get into that tonight. But my props to both Seth and Roman for the story they've told, for the bow they put on it, if indeed this is the end.
I hope it's not. If it is, I'm going to be very upset because there, like I said, there is so much more to tell with this. I mean, honestly and truly, if you were to do this right, which we know WWE, they're not, but you could honestly turn this into a year-long dance around, much like you did in the 80s with Hogan and Savage from WrestleMania 4 to WrestleMania 5. Hi, Jenny.
You could. I mean,
they're not, because they're too short-sighted. But
the questions that I've heard center around, is Seth the guy to end Roman's 553-day whatever reign?
No, he's not, because because clearly WWE has pigeonholed themselves into what we know we're going to get after the conclusion of the Men's Rumble. You know, they put their cards on the table. We knew this was going to happen when the guy on the poster behind Brian was apparently not going to be showing up at WrestleMania. We knew this was Plan B. There was no Plan C. I mean, Plan B. B stands for Brock. And I'm sorry, but without a great story, not only do I not want to see Brock and Roman as yet another WrestleMania main event, but without a good storyline, I don't want to see Roman Reigns in another WrestleMania main event. Because think about from WrestleMania 31 on, he has been the main event in almost every one of them, and
they haven't delivered.
No, and it's not always just because of Roman. It's because of his dance partner, or in the case where he actually had a really good story to build up to the main event of WrestleMania. WrestleMania that particular year had already reached the 5.5 hour long mark when Triple H made his entrance. By the way, that was the last time they were in Dallas, which is where they're at this year.
Arrow Goody.
Yeah, for Roman to be their guy, they've never done Roman any favors.
Accurate.
I mean, Roman can be the best heel in the company. Roman can be the best face in the company. The problem is if he's going to be Lex Luthor, you don't give him a Superman. If he's going to be Superman, you don't give him a Lex Luthor. And the one time you do, you wear the audience out before the main event ever begins. I mean, I remember watching WrestleMania 32 at your house, and everybody at your house, me, you, your wife, Isaac, Frank, everybody else at there, we're all slowly and surely falling asleep.
Yeah, and some people had to take off early. There were some people that looked at me around 9 o'clock and said, "Gee, I got to go."
Yeah, we almost had a sleepover at Brian's house that night.
Well, I suppose we should rip the Band-Aid off. Then.
No, can we spend just a couple of minutes on Copeland and Mizanin?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Grit Couple versus It Couple. I mean, this match over-delivered for me. I don't know what I was expecting, but this match over-delivered in spades for me.
And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I wanted to give you props on something, because you and I disagreed on something when we were previewing the Rumble, and you got it dead right, and I was totally off on that. And that was Maurice. Maurice did not look like crap. I expected her to be very much the weak link in the match, and she still was, but she was serviceable.
And I only say this because, and this is where watching Ms. and Mrs. helps inform some of this.
You are a better person for watching reality TV. I just want to let you know that, because I couldn't do it.
Well, and I don't watch all reality TV. The Lovebird watches a little more than me. I pick and choose my reality TV. You know, Ms. and Mrs. is about it right now. I used to watch a little more when The Amazing Race was, you know, in its heyday. I watched that all the time. American Idol, stuff like that. But watching Ms. and Mrs., I get a sense of how driven that woman is. You know, don't let the packaging fool you. Don't let her days as Divas champion and all that stuff fool you. She is a very driven woman. You know, she's a very driven entrepreneur. She's a very driven mother. And I can tell there's a want to be better in the ring. And that's the argument that I was trying to put forth at the Rumble preview was, you know, I think Maurice is going to surprise a few people.
You were right.
And I don't think she was serviceable. I mean, I think she was an integral part. You know, I'm not going to say that she's Trish Stratus. I'm not going to say that she's Lita. I'm not going to say that she's AJ Lee. But it's a drastic improvement from where she had been.
Okay, real quick. You mentioned Trish, you mentioned Lita, and then you mentioned AJ Lee, and there's somebody more on Trish and Lita's level that was actually in the match.
I know, Beth Phoenix. And that's a fault of mine that I don't. I know I should, because she's my homegirl. She's from Buffalo, like I am.
Was about to make the point. I'm like, dude, you're from the same hometown. How are you not big up?
But I tend to skip over her, unfortunately, and that's a fault of mine. That's totally on me when I'm talking about impactful women's wrestlers.
Yeah. I mean, the only, and honestly and truly, my opinion, the only reason Beth Phoenix, and you're not the only person that does it, the only reason Beth Phoenix gets overlooked is because of who she had to work against.
Right.
As far as credible wrestlers,
not many.
I'm one, Natty. That was it. And they didn't usually have Natty and Beth against each other because Natty and Beth are best friends.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, Beth's title defenses were against Michelle McCool, who wasn't crappy at all, and defended against Layla and Eve Torres and the Bellas. You know, not, you know, women that were great for that particular era of WWE, the Divas division. But Beth was either 10 years too late or 10 years too early.
Could you have? Could you imagine Beth in the ring with this crop of women now? Oh, could I want Beth and Charlotte, Beth and Sasha, Beth and Bayley, Beth and Becky. Oh, Beth and Io Shirai. Jeez, staggering.
You're missing one, and you're missing the big one.
Beth and Rhea.
Ding.
Yeah, or if you go backwards, Beth and Trish, Beth and Lita, Beth and Molly Holly,
Beth and Jazz, Beth and Victoria. Because I'm looking at it in terms of, okay, you know, yeah, we've got women in both, you know, both of these eras that were technically great, but you also had women in this era that were physically powerful and good in the ring. My God, the idea of Jazz and Beth, like Jazz circa WrestleMania 19 and Beth, holy crap.
Whatever you want. Whatever. I'm just here to service you. Whatever you need.
Get up and take my money.
Yeah.
But I think looking back at this match, and I don't know if they're ever going to say it or not, I think this might have been Beth's swan song.
I can see that. Because, you know, we're gearing up for edges. And because you wonder how much more he can realistically go, because he did the stuff with Randy Orton. He did the stuff with, he's done the stuff with Miz now.
Rollins.
And I heard reports, AJ Styles gave an interview where he said Edge is one of the few dream matches I have left. Yes, please.
I think the rumor I'm hearing is that's penciled in for this year. And some of the things that I've heard is that, just kind of reading rumors and speculation, it's AJ this year, and it's SummerSlam. It's a title.
Okay.
I think on the way out they're going to put a belt on him one last time, which
I'm here for.
Me as well. I'm the biggest Edge head on this show, but at the same time, you're not giving him the title just for giving him the title's sake. The guy's still got it.
Yeah.
And he's still producing at an extremely high level. But the whole end point to this is, the rumor that I've been reading is that next year's WrestleMania in LA is it. That's him, his last match shows up, he comes out on Raw the very next night. I said I wanted to end my career on my terms. These are my terms.
Yes. Okay. Let's get this part over with so that we can get to the good stuff.
Yep. Start the clock on this, and this isn't going to take long because we're pissed and we don't like it, and we don't want to get too mad. We won't turn back.
Right. Here's the argument I'm going to put forth, and this is not a hot take, because I've heard this take from several other people. This is not original, but this is how it's coming out from my brain.
Okay.
The amount of missteps in both Rumble matches, creative and otherwise, also could fill an entire episode of Wrestling with Egos.
Accurate.
And I get the fact that people turned you down. I get the fact that people might not have been ready to come back from injury. I get all that. But when you treat a WWE legend like Mickie James as an afterthought, why did you even ask her to show up except to be cannon fodder? When you book Alicia Fox stronger than some of the other women who are plying their trade for you right now, I might add, and you have, and your men's Rumble is primarily constructed before Brock comes out at the inevitable number 30 spot. Your Rumble is constructed around Bad Bunny and Shane McMahon. And I'm not here to denigrate Bad Bunny either, because this man has put in the work. We've said this before. He's taking it seriously. I'm just saying the amount of missteps from start to finish in both Rumbles just leaves you with, we are Borg, we are inevitable. Ronda Rousey, Brock Lesnar.
Bad Bunny gives more of a shit about WWE than WWE gives about WWE.
It's apparent. It's readily apparent to me. And I tune into the Rumble for the surprises and the crowd pops. And I thought, okay, the crowd being back live and in effect is going to help these Rumbles. No, it didn't.
No, dead. Oh my God.
Outside of a couple of pops, Molly Holly got Mighty Molly got a nice little pop. Mickie James got a great pop when she came out.
One thing I want to make before we go any further. Okay, I've heard Mickie James's Impact theme song 1,000 times, because especially during like the height of Impact or TNA back then, I watched it and it was great stuff. Hardcore country hits a little bit harder when you're in a big ass arena of about 40 to 50,000 people.
Yeah.
Oh, it hit. I was like, that just sounds different. And that, to me, all I ever heard it was on an Impact, when Impact's in,
5,000 seat arena.
Exactly, 5, 6, 7,000 seat arenas. You're in a dome, and you hear it, and you're like, okay, that entrance theme sounds like it belongs on a big stage.
And what that tells you is those are actually wrestling fans that came to the show. They're not just WWE sports and entertainment fans. Good wrestling translates.
Yeah,
and that is a mindset. Here's another hot take. WWE needs to stop acting like they're the only game in town, and they need to start embracing the way New Japan, AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor, etc. have, that we're all here for the same goal. We're trying to bring great wrestling to wrestling fans. They need to stop acting like they're the only game in town, because they're not anymore.
Well, in their mind, they are.
Yeah, I know.
May I sidebar for just 1 second and talk, juxtapose WWE with a different sport and very current events. And I am not tooting my own sports fan horn on this, and I'm making an honest opinion, honest thought on this.
Please don't talk about Jorge Soler's home run that hasn't landed yet.
No, I'm going to talk basketball.
Okay.
WWE is the University of Alabama, because everything revolves around them. Everybody else is their little brother. When they're not doing well, all they want to do is talk about their past successes. Even in Alabama's case, where they get their asses beat by 20 points last night against Auburn. Oh, well, we beat you guys in football. I don't give two shits. This is basketball, isn't it? You just got your asses whooped by the #1 team in the freaking country.
Right.
Same philosophy with WWE. We miss it, we screwed the pooch on the Rumble, but look at, we're going to Saudi Arabia and we're making this much money and blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? Your product freaking sucks right now. Guess what? You got your asses beat 100-81 by your arch rival in their house last night.
Yep.
Shut the hell up. Show me something. Put something on the floor that actually looks like a championship contender, and then we'll talk. Stop living off of somebody else's success. Stop riding somebody else's coattails. I'm looking at you, Nate Oates. By the way, 100. How the hell? Sidebar. How the hell do you go into halftime down 17? In 5 minutes of the second half, you cut the lead down to 2 and then lose 100-81.
I saw that and I was going to check and see how you were doing, but I'm like, no, I'm going to let it play out. There's still plenty of time left.
Oh, I'm listening to the game at work just thinking, this is an ass whooping. I was getting a little nervous when they cut the lead down to 2.
That's what I meant. Because I saw how it was a blowout at first, and Alabama had closed the gap, and then I'm like, let's let it play out.
I'm listening to it, and they start stretching. I'm like, all right, cool, we're good. And then they take out all the starters and put the freshmen in that hardly ever play, and the freshmen played so damn hard they had to get to 100 points. I was here for it.
I guess it would be different if the people who are inevitable actually were storytellers. I mean, we're starting to see that a little bit with Brock. Brock is embracing this side that he's never gotten to embrace before. But by the time Ronda got done on Raw, I'm just like, my word, why are we just, it's like
Ronda is Lance Storm, except Lance Storm wasn't trying to be Lance Storm. I could be
Lance
serious.
Storm was unintentionally hilarious.
Yes, Ronda is unintentionally pathetic. I have never seen, watching her promo from Monday night, it reminded me of that first interview that Will Ferrell does in Talladega Nights as Ricky Bobby, where he's just, the car went fast. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it seemed like. It was just.
But just the fact that that's what you've hitched your wagon to. That's what you're going to focus all your energies on.
Do you want to know? Can I give you a quick list of people that cut better promos than Ronda Rousey did on Monday night?
Am I on it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm also on it.
Okay.
Also on it. You want to know somebody else that's also on it? The Great Khali.
Ooh. That hits different.
Davari, but Davari's not allowed to speak English, which, by the way, is his first language. Nikolai Volkov, God rest his soul. Bob Backlund.
Bruce Hart.
Steve Blackman, Ken Shamrock. Yeah, I can keep going. All of these people who we know just
Bushwhackers.
Huh?
The Bushwhackers.
Oh my God, yes, I forgot about them. Jesus. But Andre, God, great, amazing talent, Hall of Famer, but there was that language barrier, so promos.
The one promo he had to nail, he did.
Yeah, but they're all better than Ronda. Ronda was lifeless. Ronda was a dead fish in the middle of the ring.
And that's not what gives me anticipation or excitement heading into WrestleMania. And that's the whole point of the Rumble. The best, the power button up there. It makes you want to turn off the TV. The best Rumbles, and you argued before about 92, which we're going to get to here real soon. But one of the things that makes the Rumbles in the discussion for GOATs is what do they spin forward? What is the story coming out of them?
Right.
And there's got to be multiple possibilities coming out of them. There's only one possibility coming out of these Rumbles, especially with the men's. I mean, at least with the women's, there's a few permutations about multiple spin-off matches.
Right.
That could serve for the undercard of night 1 or night 2.
Right.
With the men, it's just a bunch of guys. It's a bunch of tag teams. It's a bunch of, Intercontinental champions or Intercontinental Championship hopefuls and stuff like that. But it doesn't really, where's AJ coming out at number 2 and lasting for 54 minutes and eliminating 17 people so that you elevate him to a credible threat to Roman again or somebody like, I don't know, but AJ's on Raw now, isn't he?
Yes, AJ's on Raw.
Okay. As a credible threat to Lashley then. That would be intriguing to me, Lashley and Styles. I don't know. But the point is, you didn't capture your audience and give them some meaty bones, meaty pieces of chicken to sink their teeth into on the road to WrestleMania. You gave them a pizza roll and said, have a nice dinner.
Hey.
I like pizza rolls too, but I don't want a pizza roll as the result of a Royal Rumble.
Yeah, you're right. Or
they put pizza rolls out for the Labor Day cookout.
Yeah.
You're bringing it all back.
Yeah, really crappy hot wings that they serve on that show, Hot Ones, that Gordon Ramsay referred to as granddad's toenails. Here's something that I wanted to point out. And you talked about it earlier, the word inevitable. We're looking at surprises, and I was really pissed off going into the Women's Rumble because there wasn't a whole lot of room for surprises. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we'll get somebody big that we won't that'll generate a pretty big pop. Well, that ended up being Molly Holly. There were so many rumors and speculation that there was rumors that the big surprise was going to be Paige, which would have blown the roof off the damn dome.
Yeah, that would have been something.
But we're into the mid-20s, and Ronda shows up, and you're like, well, that's it.
I would argue that Sasha, for me, was a surprise, but why did you bring her out so early, and why did you eliminate her so early? Unless you have other plans for her. I didn't think Sasha was supposed to be back till a couple weeks later.
Here's my thoughts on Sasha. Sasha's cleared. Sasha's a name. We have to put her in the Rumble.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, what are we going to do with Sasha?
Mm-hmm. We'll think of something.
It's not even an I don't know to the point where you're actually looking at the person and saying, I don't know. It's that mumbled,
And then you go back to catering to get some,
pizza rolls.
Get some more pizza rolls. So it's just, the bottom line is it's unfortunate that your first Rumble back in, 2 years with fans has to go down that way. But I want to see what happens. I mean, I'm always going to spin it forward. I'm always going to tune in. Well, I'm not going to tune in to the next one because it's in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
but
no.
I'll keep an eye on the dirt sheets, and we'll see what's going on. Maybe the good Dr. Chris Muller can write a think piece about it, and we'll figure our information out that way.
Here's my last point I want to make on both of these Rumbles. Ronda comes out. Well, that's over. We have no idea where we're going through the men's Rumble with literally no idea. We're through 29 people and we are still fumbling around in the dark because it is so directionless. To the point, Shane McMahon came out, got himself over in that, with an attempt to get himself over more in that match than I have ever done in the history of wrestling with egos. All of a sudden, I'm watching him going, dude, back that crap off. To the point WWE they fired a McMahon, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And you're fumbling around so much in the dark until number 30, and Brock comes out. And it's simply, oh, for fart's sake. Like, oh, for the love of God, really? It's kind of like, you ever watch a really suspect movie that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but you're thinking, this is one of those deals where, okay, if the ending is really good, it can make it all make sense, and it'll go from being a crappy movie to holy crap. It took the crappy movie and made it into Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Pretty much. Okay, let's lighten the mood a little bit and let's talk about something fun.
Yes.
As promised, we are reviewing the 1992 Royal Rumble event emanating from the Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York. I figured we would distill this down to just talking about the Rumble itself, because the only thing of consequence that happened in the undercard was Roddy Piper winning the Intercontinental Championship from Brett? The Mountie. Sorry, not Brett.
But before we get to that, real quick, I just got to say one thing. The opening match. New Foundation and Orient Express. First off, if you don't know who the Orient Express are, if you ever watched old school AWA, it was Bad Company. Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond, who had one of the slickest freaking finishers that I ever saw in the 80s. Diamond would do like the whole double leg slingshot over, and as the dude's flying across the ring, Tanaka would jump up and DDT him.
That was entertaining. I mean, I thought, this was a nice little lid lifter.
But I'm watching that match and I'm like, God almighty, I forgot how good Owen was. But the point I told you this in our pre-show meeting that I had an interesting little factoid about the let me find it again. About that match. So they're telling the story, Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon are telling the story that 4 nights ago, Bret Hart, with a 100 and some odd degree fever, dropped the title to the Mountie. The reason he dropped the title at a house show, and I'm reading this from Cultaholic, and I quote, Hart knew weeks in advance that he would be dropping the belt at the live event to the Mountie. Sometime between learning those plans and the actual switch, Hart had actually agreed to a deal with WCW that would have seen him debut on the Clash of Champions 2 days after the Rumble. A guaranteed deal worth more money was what lured Bret, who simply had to back out of it when he learned that his WWE contract had rolled over without his realizing it.
Wow.
Ding. Bret was on his way out. And you talked about at the beginning of the show how this Royal Rumble had so many what might have been, what could have been, what ifs.
That's a staggering one.
There's another one. Because think about this. This is 1992. What is about to happen just a few months removed from now?
Him and Shawn are about to touch for the first time.
Not only that, he's about to beat Flair.
Yeah.
He's in the fall of 92, he beats Flair for the title after Flair beat Savage for it shortly after SummerSlam. Because we go into Survivor Series of 1992 with Brett as the champion, because it's Brett and Shawn, champion versus champion. Not title for title, but champion versus champion. And then Brett loses the title at WrestleMania 9 in Vegas to Yokozuna.
Yikes.
Holy crap.
That's got my head spinning.
All right, so doing that timeline, we made a movie reference earlier. Here's another movie reference, The Matrix.
Yeah.
We're dodging some bullets on that one.
Yeah, we are.
Okay. We talk, on the show, we always talk about how, there's the great grand timeline of wrestling. This is a timeline disrupting.
Yeah, that rips the timeline to shreds.
Yeah, because let's be honest, if this happens, could you make the argument that WWE may be dead?
Yeah, because there's no screw job if this happens.
There's no screw job. There's no Austin, because who was the guy in the ring with Austin when he officially got over?
Brett? Yeah. Wow.
There's no screw job. There's no Shawn, because there's no Iron Man match.
It's not often that I'm rendered speechless on this show, but
that is a scary, scary thought.
That's
nuts. Let's think about one last thing. If this happens, what we're doing right now isn't happening. Our friendship is baseball, football, and golf.
We could still make it work.
We totally would make it work. But there's no wrestling. We're not watching wrestling. AEW.
This is a golf equipment podcast.
Yeah. AEW isn't a thing.
Right.
Because WWE isn't a thing.
Right, Patrick, take out that new putter you got. Let's take a look at the head on that thing and talk about the grip for a minute. What do you think about that grip?
Yeah, let's not talk about my putter, because my putter is the one club in my bag that I can't hit straight.
No lies detected.
No.
So let's fast forward to the Rumble match itself. Let me give you some of the circumstances surrounding this match and why it was contested under the way it was contested. We have a vacated WWF championship at this point because of the shenanigans surrounding these Survivor Series and this Tuesday in Texas matches between The Undertaker and Hulk Hogan.
Can you just say the word just one time? I know you hate it, but can I just hear you say it one time?
Shenaniganery.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
I prefer saying shenanigans, but
because it's grammatically correct, but I like my little word that I made up, and
So one of my personal heroes, WWF Commissioner Jack Tunney, stated that for the first time ever, the Royal Rumble, the winner of that match would become the new WWF champion. And so that's kind of the groundwork is laid there, and you have all of these people that want to lay claim to it. And I have the listing of the people that were in. There's some names in here. There's some people that could make a claim for it. You got people like Macho Man Randy Savage participated in it. Roddy Piper is in it, fresh off winning the Intercontinental Championship earlier in the evening. Imagine if he becomes a double champion. That would have been awesome.
First off, that promo that he cuts after the Intercontinental title match with Mean Gene, that was so good.
Yep. You've got British Bulldog is in here. Shawn Michaels is in here, a very not quite yet fully formed Shawn Michaels.
Dude, what happened a week before the Rumble?
The Rockers broke up.
Exactly. We're looking at Shawn Michaels fresh off of Remy Marty Jannetty's face, Marty Jannetty's face through the barbershop window.
And then you've also got some holdovers from the 80s heyday of WWF. You know, people like Sergeant Slaughter and Ted DiBiase and Jimmy Superfly Snuka and people like that.
Greg Valentine.
Greg the Hammer Valentine. But then you also have...
Don't forget WWE legend, the Repo Man.
How could we forget about the Repo Man? Jake the Snake Roberts is in here as well. But you notice I'm leaving out a couple of big, very important names. I'm leaving out the names of The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, Sid Justice, and Ric Flair.
Yes.
Which are the four most important people in this match, I would argue.
Okay.
Just based off of the storyline spinning forward and the amount of eliminations they had and stuff like that. That's what I'm basing it on.
Fair statement. I have watched this match back, much like Starrcade 92. I have watched this match back a gajillion times. And I'm to the point now that I'm at the people coming out and think, okay, what could have been, for countless different reasons. You know, that I also look at that particular wrestler's timeline, like, okay, what are they going to go on and do, or what are they going to be responsible for? Like I made the statement earlier tonight while watching it. To get prepped one last time before the show, made the statement to Nurse Rant Mode On as Erwin R. Shyster came out and said, and years later, his son would become a wrestler and scare the shit out of a whole bunch of kids.
Yeah.
But just kind of looking at it, and not only, like I said, those what might have beens, but everything for me at this point in my life is all overshadowed by one person. Bobby freaking Heenan.
Because you can make the argument that this match, this Rumble, is primarily about establishing Ric Flair in the eyes of WWF than WWF fans. Because yes. I don't know, having not experienced it, how much people watching both promotions happened back then. I get the sense that at this point you were a one or the other kind of person, because maybe you didn't have the avenues to do it, watch both.
It depended on where you were. I know, like, as I was growing up in Northeast Alabama, there were places, like, I was fortunate, to live in a city and a neighborhood that could get cable, and a lot of my cousins that lived in other parts of, like, a more southern county, like the one county south of us, that lived in a more rural area. They didn't have cable, so it was all bunny ears and syndication, and they didn't get a station that syndicated WWF. They just got WTBS. And for wrestling,
that's how it was for me growing up in a suburb of Buffalo. It was Saturday morning. If I remembered it was on type deal, I would turn on, whatever show it was, WWF Superstars or whatever.
Right.
And I only saw the one pay-per-view as a kid. I only ever saw WrestleMania 3. It wasn't until college that I got back into it. So it wasn't on the brain the way other sports were, like football and watching to see what my team is doing, baseball, that sort of thing.
And, especially in the 80s, on Saturdays, 6:05 p.m. on the Superstation, that's when you had your, that's when World Championship Wrestling came on. And it was always very, especially during the spring and summer, really easy to rope people in, because not only did Ted Turner own the network that had WCW, Ted Turner owned the sports team that just happened to be on TV right before World Championship. Jim Crockett Promotions would come on. So you go from Braves game to wrestling, and
yeah, we'll just leave it out. Let's see what Sting's doing this week.
And the remote gets put down because you have especially in the 80s, you had to have something in the spirits after watching the Braves, because the only thing the Braves had was Dale Murphy and a whole bunch of losses. Thank God for the early 90s.
You guys had Charlie Lee Brandt for a while.
Charlie Lee Brandt was late 80s and early 90s. Charlie Lee Brandt was a starter in both in the 91 and 92 World Series. Game 7 of the 91 World Series, one of the greatest baseball games ever played.
So it's apparent to me then that they send Flair out at number 3 and are giving him the Iron Man spot. And this was the first example in a Rumble that I can remember of people having a strategy.
Yes.
And I only figured this out being much older and going back and consuming it. I'm like, okay, he's got a strategy. He's not mixing it up with every fresh guy that comes in. He's making himself scarce. He's hiding in the corner.
He was?
Well, there were parts. Like later on, it was evident where he would kind of just, hang out in the corner with one person and trade chops with them or something like that. As the ring began to fill up, he wasn't seeking out every single guy and trying to take it to him, because that's a one-way ticket over the top rope.
But when the ring was more empty, when somebody would come in, the first guy that they'd get their hands on would be Flair.
Yes. And Flair would turn him back.
Right. And I agree with you on that. Not, putting Flair in where he went. I mean, you could have easily made the argument, according to Bobby Heenan's book, the argument initially was for Flair to be the first guy in.
Right.
And then it somehow went to 3. And then according to Bobby Heenan, Vince claimed it was all his idea. Shocker there. But you not only establish Flair, not only is the Iron Man, but Flair's also going to go after everybody. There's literally not a single person, if you go back and watch that Rumble, there's not a single person that was in the ring with Flair. There was one person that was in the Rumble that Flair never put his hands on. Ted DiBiase. Why? DiBiase
on before. Yeah.
DiBiase and Sherry were coming up the ramp as Flair was coming down.
Yeah.
And that's it. Flair literally either gets his hands on every person or they got their hands on him. But yeah, he touched 28 of 29 people.
And it's also very clear, going back to your point about Bobby the Brain Heenan, Bobby Heenan understood what his job was there too. His job was to get Flair over also. And when I was younger, I'm like, oh my God, would you stop cheering for the guy? But I was watching that as a fan at the time who didn't know jack about Ric Flair and was pulling for, I don't know. I remember liking Tito Santana at the time. I remember liking Roddy Piper at the time. I'm like, why can't they win? Why can't Jake the Snake Roberts win?
I can tell you exactly why. Because that wouldn't be fair to Flair.
Yes. And just you could fill up the back of a T-shirt with one-liners from his call of this match, So everybody did their job here. Well, almost everybody did their job here. Well, I'll get to that in a minute.
I think I know where you're going with this. Real quick, though. First off, if you were, I challenge you guys. First off, don't drive after you do this. Set up a bottle of your favorite adult beverage and a shot glass. And every time you hear Bobby Heenan say that wouldn't be fair to Flair, throw you one back. Let's see how long you last. I promise you won't make it through the Rumble.
Make sure you're in a comfy chair when you do it. It's just
very much so. Very much so. Secondly, I think the first time I went back and watched it after the network became a thing 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was. First time I went back and watched it, that's when I got the appreciation for Bobby Heenan. And the first time that Gorilla Monsoon reminds him that no one that has ever drawn 1 through 5 has ever been there at the end of the Rumble, and then Heenan comes him off with, "Oh, would you shut up?" Laugh my ass off at that. And then the other one that still cracks me up even to this day, just a few hours ago. Piper and Flair start mixing it up, and then somebody, can't remember who it was about to dump Flair over, and then Piper comes and makes a save. "Oh, thank you, Piper. Thank you, Piper. It's not a skirt. It's a kilt." And then no more than 60 seconds later, Piper smacks Flair. "Oh, you skirt wearing freak."
Yeah, you could call it like a descent into madness on commentary, because I've just never heard a match of any kind called that way, because the commentators are just supposed to be there to call the action and provide color. And
brilliant.
Yeah.
And you knew right off the bat you were getting it, because 3, 2, 1, horn. Who's it gonna be? Flair comes out.
Oh no. Oh no.
First word out of Bobby Heenan's mouth. Damn it.
Yeah.
And it is on from there, boys and girls.
So I have some problems with this Rumble.
Okay. Hit it.
The finish was so convoluted, and I think I have a reason why it was convoluted.
I do too, and I have a feeling we might be on the same page.
And it's because of a man that I've said before on this show that I used to think one way about, and now I think completely different about him. And I'll just give you the quote. "That doesn't work for me, brother."
Yeah, you have to do the Fu Manchu.
I have to stroke the Fu Manchu. It's the one stain on the match as far as the Flair angle is concerned.
Agreed.
It's because Hogan hangs around after he gets eliminated by Sid and distracts Sid and pulls his arm so that he's draped over the top rope so that Flair can then just lift the legs up and dump him over. Why not just let the performers have them stand on their own merits? And I know it's because it doesn't work for you, brother, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. If I'm booking it, I look Hulk Hogan right in the face and I say, "It's not all about you, brother. You're not the only person employed here. And I don't care about the collateral damage because of it."
Well, Vince, despite the fact that he says he has grapefruits, never does.
No.
Coward. And secondly, I don't necessarily think that it was a situation where it didn't work for him, brother. I think it was a situation where someone else was saying, "This isn't good shit, pal." Because if you go back and you read into it more, and even listen to like Bruce Pritchard's podcasts, the house shows that they were running to kind of gauge interest in Hogan versus Flair did not draw for WWE. Right. Did not worth a damn, because Northern fans, sorry Yankees, but Northern fans didn't give two shits about Ric Flair. They didn't get it. They didn't know who he was. They didn't understand.
And something else and this just came to me, I don't have it written down, but this is 1992. Hulkamania, in this incarnation anyway, is starting to run its course a little bit. Yes. Interesting factoid that I found out when I was doing my research. As it happened in the arena, when Hulk Hogan got eliminated, the fans popped. And the commentary, was lauding Sid Justice for it. The version you watch now, the commentary, like I guess Gorilla Monsoon went back and recorded different commentary, and it's overdubbed about disparaging Sid,
calling him
sneaking up
in the night.
Yeah, and they edit out the crowd reaction to make it look like, oh, they're either indifferent or they're.
Wait, You mean they edited the crowd reaction when Hogan got eliminated, much like they edited the crowd reaction during Ronda Rousey's very quiet, very boring as crap promo, where they actually
probably one and the same.
Where they actually put in crowd reaction instead of crickets. I mean, Ronda Rousey was so bad they didn't even give her a wet chant.
Yeah. So, and
yeah.
I guess I'll sum it up like this. What this leads to is the double main event at WrestleMania 8. Because of the poor reception to Hogan versus Flair in the house shows, they split the two of them up, and they run Sid versus Hogan, and they run Flair versus Savage for the championship.
Which, let's be honest, that storyline between Savage and Flair turned out to be great because they brought Liz into it, and the doctored pictures and everything else. I thought that was a great build. And at the same time, that's why I never really had a problem with the finish. Knowing what I know now, the finish of the '92 Rumble made sense because this was Vince giving himself a way out. If
Right.
he had the he was with Hogan helping to eliminate Sid. This gave him a in case of emergency break glass card, which he played. He didn't have a choice because from a home fan base standpoint, Flair wasn't going to sell.
Right.
It wasn't going to sell. It wasn't going to sell buy rate. Savage would.
Yeah.
But it's because one, Flair was an unknown commodity, mostly in the quote unquote New York area. Two, Hogan was becoming face Roman a couple of years ago, and so who do you really give a flying crap about in this at all? Throw in Savage, and now we have someone we give a damn about, and we don't like Flair.
I wonder if, and this is probably just wishful thinking on my part, I wonder if it were me, if I wouldn't sit down with Flair and say, okay, our fans up here don't know that much about you. Let's use our television time to educate them about you. And let's explain to the fans why they should care that Flair and Hogan is a monumental encounter. And let's go ahead and have that main event.
Wishful
and
thinking.
then we can find something else for Sid to do. We can spin him down. I never thought that much of Sid anyway. And you can definitely find something else for Savage to do. Sid is never really, it's not the same thing as Vader. Not really getting Vader. I mean, and since I've watched more of his stuff when I was challenged to by you and Isaac a couple weeks ago, I have, and because there's some stuff that I forgot about, and I'm ready to recant that a little bit. But Sid is somebody I've never really gotten, and I get the fascination because he's huge and he's built, and the intensity and but again, a lot of these other names I rattled off, it would be nice to see them get their due.
Right. I mean, I think totally lost the train of thought that I was going to have. I think for why they did what they did, Sid had just come into the fray. I mean, he had just debuted at SummerSlam the year prior in Madison Square Garden as the guest referee between Hogan and Warrior versus the Triangle of Terror.
Yeah.
And now he's in the ring, and there were high hopes for Sid.
Too soon?
Not
or
done.
is this how they did? This is how they did things back then. They hot shot people that they had faith in.
They were hot shotting Sid, yeah, but okay, we're gonna hot shot him, but we're not really gonna have a plan, which is a very
We still have the Hulkster, and yay!
Exactly. They were
back to me, brother.
Yeah, exactly. All things go back to that. I think they had plans for Sid, but they executed them piss poorly. Which is why he didn't last long in WWE in this go around, and then would come back a couple of years later, and a couple of years later after going back to WCW, because remember, he's going to go from this to being across the ring from the Shockmaster. And then he's going to come back.
Keeps on giving.
And then he's going to come back a couple of years, come back to WWE and be Shawn's bodyguard and then WWE champion, which, by the way, his WWE championship run as a babyface, vastly underrated because that dude was freaking over.
Yeah.
I mean, come to the ring. He's got the big-ass wingspan, so he's fist bumping fans on both sides, and he's connected. Just boom, boom.
Doesn't have to take a step to the left or a step to the right, you know.
Yeah, it was, and that was one thing for me was a cool factor about Sid, because it was that intensity, and he was doing things like, you know, just that, you know, who's the man, you know, the fist pumps and the fit, you know, the pounding your chest and then the fist bumps. It was that intense cool factor. I'm like, okay, now this guy is a straight up ass kicker. And
so I guess you could make the argument this is another one of those linchpin moments. Are we sitting here if they go ahead with Hogan versus Flair? Or does WWE kind of fizzle out because of that? I mean, if they go ahead with Hogan versus Flair, it's probably not very critically well received.
And Hogan's going over.
You can answer this question better than I can. Was it 96 in WCW that they crossed paths to, you know, 95? Do you know how long, big man, you know, that kind of thing?
Yep.
What was the reception like for that? Was it bonkers or was it, okay?
It was not quiet. I don't remember it specifically. I remember Shaq was involved. He presented the WCW championship to the winner, which ended up being Hogan. Hogan coming to WCW was a big effing deal.
Okay.
A massive deal. And that was pretty much right off the bat. It's inevitable, like almost instantly, we're gonna get Hogan Flair. And that's exactly what we got. And if I remember correctly, I think I want to say it was a Bash at the Beach. Man, that pay-per-view ends up with some freaking lineage, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But if because it was in Orlando that year. That's why Shaq was involved, because he was still playing for the Magic. Hogan got a massive pop that night, because that was his in-ring debut. First night in, becomes WCW champion, because Bobby Heenan is sounding like he is crying tears of sorrow because Flair, which was another brilliant
other
thing
side of the coin from the Rumble, if you will.
But that's why, to me, that's why Hogan Flair worked one place where it didn't work the other, because Flair wasn't seen as a big deal up here. Flair wasn't seen as a big deal in WWF. Hogan was seen as a big deal in WCW.
And that's not Flair's fault. That's not really anybody's fault. It's just the lack of, it's the ignorance of the Northern fans.
No, it is somebody's fault. Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Well, yes, because
now you can't give these interviews like, okay, well, the reason WWF did not acknowledge who Ric Flair was number one, they really couldn't, because they didn't want to have to acknowledge Jim Crockett Promotions and WCW. Number two, if you'll remember, Flair was still in possession of the big gold belt,
yes,
which
he was.
The video distort because of a lawsuit, because Crockett sued the piss out of him and won. Crockett was it was WCW then, because Jim Herd was running the show.
Best executive ever, the history of ever.
WCW was running two different lawsuits. They were suing Vince and they were suing Flair because Flair had the belt. But they didn't really, other than he's the real world's champion, that's all they really ever did. If they would have done more, it might have been a bigger deal. But they didn't /
circumstances being what they were, yeah.
Exactly. Now you flip that around a couple of years later, people, if you're a wrestling fan, you know who Hulk Hogan is.
Yes.
Even in the early to mid 90s, before the internet, you knew who Hulk Hogan was.
And there is another reason why this Rumble, unfortunately, gets talked about quite a bit, and it's because, the melancholy version of this is we've lost so many competitors from this match. And I did not actually do the research to see, but it's right around half. I probably did.
I did, and I included backstage. I included non-wrestling talent and all wrestlers across the board, not just the people in the Rumble. So we'll count them as we go. Anvil, Owen, Piper, Earthquake, and your WWF Tag Team title match. All four guys are dead. No, I'm sorry. Typhoon's not dead. Fred Ottman is not dead. Take that back.
So you're talking about the whole pay-per-view. I don't have the whole pay-per-view down in front of me. But
whole pay. Owen and Anvil are both dead. Piper's dead. Earthquake's dead. Hawk and Animal are dead. The Bulldog is dead. Kerry Von Erich, Nikolai Volkov, Big Boss Man, Hercules Hernandez, Jimmy Snuka, Randy Savage, Mean Gene, Gorilla, Bobby Heenan, and Jack Tunney.
Yeah.
Oh, and Mr. Perfect. I forgot.
That's amazing to me. I just, it's, and this is that thing that, I've talked about on this show before, that I'm at the age of, we all are at the age now where people that were instrumental in our development as fans of whatever the industry is, wrestling, music, actors and actresses and stuff like that. Some of those people are starting to leave us.
Right.
And it's depending on, how big of a fan you are of that person, there's nothing fun about it. It stinks.
No.
I equate it to the day that Prince died, unfortunately, for me was, huge. When we lost Eddie Guerrero, huge. Some of the people in this match, I was a big time fan of Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
I was a big time fan of the Big Boss Man. Now, the Big Boss Man I got behind quite a bit. No matter when he was a bad guy later on, in one of Vince's heavies, but as a character in the 80s, with the powder blue cop shirt, hanging open every time he wrestled and stuff like that, and the Billy Club.
He was a fat guy that could move.
Yes, he could. God bless you, Ray Traylor, because
Traylor's one of the most underrated. This is gonna sound horrible, but one of the underrated fat guy wrestlers of all time, because Ray Traylor moved.
I am very glad that Jake the Snake is still with us. That is a big win that Jake the Snake is still with us.
Okay, you see all these guys, and you can look at some of these people and how they died. We know how Hawk died. Trying to think of some other drug issues. I think Hercules had some drug issues. Bulldog had drug issues. Perfect had drug issues. And I'm sorry to say this. How are Flair and Jake still alive?
By the grace of God.
I know.
That's all I can say.
Especially Jake Roberts. Holy crap. But you look at it and you see we talked about how Roman and Seth was a Shakespearean storytelling masterpiece to when we began this show. We ended by looking at the 92 Rumble almost a Shakespearean tragedy, because again, we go back to this all the time, but the grand timeline of wrestling. You put a couple of people back into this timeline and the whole damn game changes. Like, give you one great example. And we've talked about this on this show before. And I think it was me, you, and RJ specifically. It was before Isaac had joined us. And I posed one question, and it was, what if Owen didn't die? And I can't remember if it was all three of us, but I know RJ and I both pretty much said at the exact same time, we're not talking about Brett.
No, we're not, because Owen was gearing up to get the push of all pushes.
Owen would have eventually been infinitely, well, when Owen died, Owen was infinitely better than Brett. But
because that was my biggest takeaway from the SummerSlam that we reviewed with the cage match, was that Owen was wrestling circles around Brett.
Yeah.
And using the cage to his advantage better than Brett ever could.
Right. Here's another one. And for me watching this on syndication on ESPN, what if Kerry Von Erich never screwed himself up with his ankle injury and then the drugs? Von Erich, my God, if you want to look at it, you want to look at someone physically, Kerry Von Erich was a dude tailor-made for WWE. Built like a Greek god, good-looking dude, and could wrestle his ass off.
Yep.
I mean, he wasn't even the best wrestler in his family, but the man could still go. And he very famously hung in there in front of about 30,000 people in Texas Stadium with one Ric Flair and won the NWA World Championship. Mainly because it should have been his brother David, but different story for a different time. Just other, from, just kind of looking at this, there's really not a whole lot of other ones that were just what could have been, but there were still some tragic stories. I mean, both good and bad. The tragedy that became Jimmy Snuka. We lost.
My biggest what if, and I don't know if this is because of his age, but I still think not putting a title on Hot Rod was a missed opportunity.
They put the Intercontinental title on.
I'm talking about the WWF Championship. In my opinion, Roddy Piper is the greatest wrestler to never win the WWE Championship, and I will put that up against anybody.
I'll disagree with you. Well, and we've just mentioned the name of the guy, and that would be my answer.
Owen Hart, yes. Yeah.
And, there's no question about that.
When you're talking about charisma, there aren't many people with more charisma than Hot Rod.
Right. But here's my argument against Piper winning the WWF Championship. He didn't need it.
Fair.
That was a guy that was going to be Roddy Piper was going to be Roddy Piper, whether or not he had gold around his waist or not. He was one of the few guys in the history of wrestling that did not need.
Now that you say that, I feel like you've advanced that point before. And if that's rehash, I apologize. But I feel,
I know I've hashed that point about somebody in the history of the show, but I don't know if it was Piper or not. There's a handful of people in the history of wrestling that you can say didn't need the world championship. That they did fine without it. And there's also some people you can say, they won it, but didn't necessarily have to have it. For me, Piper's one of those first name that comes to mind as far as someone that, we could have, but we didn't need to. That was kind of an unnecessary kind of deal.
Are there any more points you would like to advance on the 92 Rumble before we?
Yeah, one more crime, and it's not anybody's fault. It's an injury thing. The fact that at this point in time, Curt Hennig is relegated to being the manager of of Ric Flair. Curt Hennig, because of not in the ring, and that sucks. I said Owen Hart was the greatest wrestler to never win the WWF Championship. Curt Hennig would be number 2.
Yeah, that's a tragedy, because as great as he was in the late 80s in the ring, oh my goodness.
Perfect as WWF champion would have been insufferable.
Yeah.
No, seriously, he would have been insufferable as WWF champion, and it would have been magnificent. I mean, we're talking insufferable to the point of on the level of The Miz.
Yeah, Miz would be taking notes from him.
Yeah, and instead of just being cocky, or instead of being obnoxious, just cocky. Because he is exactly what he says he is, and that's absolutely perfect.
Yes.
Well,
and if only the 2022 Royal Rumble could have been as well received as the 1992 Royal Rumble.
A 16th as good as this?
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna ask for a half. I think that's asking way too much. If you would have given me a 16th of the 92 Rumble, I think I might have been at least somewhat happy.
But instead, we got Alicia Fox. But that's fine. That's another story for another day. So we want to say.
Remember how earlier I mentioned that button?
Yes.
There's another button. Like when Alicia Fox came out, let me find it.
Is there erase?
No, that button right there.
The mute button.
Yeah.
I'm like the home button. Wait a minute. I'm going home?
The mute button.
Nice.
Also could have used that during Ronda's promo.
Yeah.
No, for Ronda's promo, it would have been that button right there.
That's forward. Yeah. File not found.
Yeah.
At any rate, we are going to end it there for tonight. So we want to thank you for joining us for this 2022 Royal Rumble recap and 1992 Royal Rumble review. Until we meet again, this is Brian for the Reverend of the Rant over there in camera 2, Patrick, and for everyone else associated with the show, for Isaac, for RJ, for our significant others. We appreciate you big time. Get at us on Twitter, email the show, leave us that 5-star review on YouTube. And remember, always, this is why we love professional wrestling. This is how we break this down for you week by week. Until we meet again, this is Wrestling with Egos. Out.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and we have no idea what we're talking about next week.
Should be fun.
Oh, yeah, always is.